in Germany, Italy, Spain, Portugal, and Greece, you need 4 couples to produce a single great-grandchild. And when we look at the effect of aging on the percentage of health spending in the US, we can see that it's increasing relentlessly. The future is not just about economics or politics or health, it's about emotion. How old people actually feel and what generation they actually belong to. Let's take this child. Such a child could easily have been a young adult at the time of the Beatles' success. They could have been 20 years old in 1967. Such a person is only 65 years old now. So someone who lived through the swinging 60s, the sexual revolution, is now an old age pensioner. And I promise you, when they look in the mirror, they don't see an old age pensioner. Most people who look in the mirror don't recognize themselves when they get to the age of 70 or 80. They see someone who's younger. And if you think about people who were 20 years old in the 1960s in China, you're talking about people who may have been members of the Red Guard, part of the Mao Cultural Revolution. And we think of all the history that they have seen. So when we are looking to market to older people, we need to understand their life journey, what their aspirations are, and what the next things could be that could affect that journey. We have biological age, mental age, emotional age. We must understand where the customer is, biologically, mentally, emotionally, and socially, in order to market to them. And things change at extraordinary speed. Within 20 minutes, you may find that their entire world has changed. If you think that for a 75-year-old, their life expectancy is less than 10 years. So if you're marketing to that segment, over the next 10 years, you're marketing to someone who is potentially going to go from fully active, well, independent, loving life, and having a very good quality of life, right through to someone who is suddenly on the floor, having had a first heart attack or a stroke, is then suddenly in an operation, convalescing, and then hopefully getting back to normal full independence again, but maybe not. So you might have someone last week that you was not interested in ways of regulating their cholesterol, but this week has just been told that their cholesterol is really high, and they've just had their first heart attack. Now they are suddenly in the market for buying HDL boosters. And of course we're looking at a generation who are becoming increasingly web focused. In fact, one of the fastest growing users of iPads is the group of people who are over the age of 65, because they can enlarge the screen. This is a generation of people who often know more about what's wrong with them than their physicians. A generation who have been trained in their mind to think about performance, not just wellness. This is the Viagra generation. This is the generation whose children have been taking stimulants in high school to encourage their memory. Up to 1 in 5 of all students in America are using substances or abusing substances which are designed to improve memory, and they're using them in order to improve their exam performance. This is a world which expects a mental Viagra for people with Alzheimer's, but not just people with Alzheimer's, maybe for every 75-year-old to improve their own mental well-being and performance. This is a world that is hoping for all kinds of ways to reverse the physical signs of aging, which is why we see such explosive growth in Botox, laser hair removal, and cosmetic surgery. This is a world where people are looking for improvements in their quality of life in the broadest sense. This is a world which is becoming increasingly obsessed with nutrition, and about time too, you could think, with the fact that 1 in 3 newborn babies born in New York today will develop adult-style diabetes before they become adults, because they are too fat, basically, or become so fat as children. Obesity now costing the US economy at least $100 billion a year. But the obsession with nutrition is far beyond that. It's an obsession with nutrition as medicine, as performance enhancers. We're looking at a global market perhaps for nutraceutical ingredients of maybe 24 billion by 2015. We're looking at a situation where China will overtake the US and Western Europe as the largest producer and consumer of such things. And that's before you put in India. We're looking at a world where already there are large numbers of people who are prepared to pay over $100 for just 1.7 ounces of a formula that they hope will make their wrinkles slightly smaller. This is a world which is particularly anxious about Alzheimer's. Memory loss is the biggest challenge of all, perhaps, for a generation that is increasingly beating cancer, heart attacks, strokes, and a whole range of other illnesses. A generation where the life expectancy of a woman who's 60 years old today is increasing by 1 week every month without any great medical advances. This is the generation whose common complaint is lack of energy. In fact, energy or tiredness is one of the main reasons why people over the age of 65 go to their pharmacist or look for alternative therapies. They're tired. They just want an energy boost. They wish they had the same spring in their step that they had when they were in their mid-30s. This is a generation that science may have some big answers for. Take, for example, the studies we've seen in rats and mice using things like alpha-lipoic acid and acetyl-L-carnitine to improve the performance of mitochondria. Mitochondria are the energy packs, as you know, in every cell. They provide the electricity supply, and mitochondria are cells within cells. They have their own genetic code and they reproduce themselves. But mitochondria become increasingly inefficient as time goes by. So some of that electricity, up to 20%, just crosses the cell barrier without performing any useful function. But with alpha-lipoic acid and acetyl-carnitine, the performance of these mitochondria is returned almost to normal for a young person. And we have seen dramatic improvements in the memory capacity of mice learning mazes, in healing and immune function in people who have had, in animals who have had these kinds of therapies. These are small molecules, they could easily be taken in food. And then we see this revolution in diagnostics, which is a recurring theme, as we'll see in a moment. Computer-aided clinical decisions, a world where Ottawa Hospital alone has just ordered 3,000 iPads, a world of virtual medicine, and so on. And here is a very interesting trend. 90% of older people in the US would like to get their test results themselves, maybe online, before being told by their doctor. This is a world where people want to learn about the tests which they have online. They want to manage their own healthcare. They want to take their own decisions. That's why this single site in the UK, Lab Tests Online, has seen 2 million visits every single month. This is why we're seeing a boom in home testing, cholesterol home testing kits, or saliva test for a whole range of things, or colon health checkers. We have the technology to see a dramatic improvement in gene screening. In 2000, it cost around $100 million to read your genome, and it would take many months to do the work. But today, we can read your genome perhaps in around 2 hours at a target price of around $1,000. And that's the ion proton system, which was featured at the World Economic Forum at Davos last year, and is a very exciting piece of technology. It's all related to a world where healthcare is shifting from hospital to clinic and from clinic to home. And if we were looking at big business opportunities for Sanofi in terms of diversity, I would say look here, look at do-it-yourself healthcare, diagnostics that you buy over the counter, neutraceuticals, dietary enhancements, and so on. If you just look at home telemonitoring, it's a growing market. We're talking about over 2 million people whose health is being assessed minute by minute in real time using wireless technology at home. This will be a 22 billion market by 2015. It of course relates to many other things like oxygen therapy at home, people being on ventilators at home. And here I just want to add something else. In the scenarios that you have, most of them are of very active people. That's great, but there's more to life than that. Because as I have said, every one of the people in every one of your scenarios will get older. They are on a journey. They will become more dependent. Their needs are likely to change. How they feel about the world will also evolve. So I would be interested, as a challenge to you, to age each of the scenarios. To say what happens to, let's say, a group of people we identify, let's say in this segment, it could be, we find 1 million people who are 75 to 80 years old, who have the following characteristics and attitudes to life. You know, maybe they're busy bees or whatever it is you want to call them. Now, let's imagine what happens to that 1 million people over the next 5 years, over the next 10 years. And if you can engage them, perhaps with a little heart monitor that looks just at the level of oxygen in their blood, perhaps with some nutraceuticals at first, perhaps with some other support or whatever it is that you're beginning to sell them, and Sanofi becomes part of their lives, where else could you take them on their journey? And let's not get into too much of an artificial divide between independent and dependent people. It's a completely continuous process. I am on the board of an organisation in the UK that delivers 40 million visits to people at home. All of them are independent. And maybe they need just an hour of cleaning a week. Others might need help to get dressed a little bit in the morning, but they are otherwise independent in their own homes. They go out shopping, they make their own purchasing decisions. They are absolutely, I would think, should be considered part of the core marketing strategy for diversification for Sanofi, looking at the needs of those over the age of 65. And to leave them out would be, I think, a great pity, since otherwise your segments get smaller. Yes, it's true you have 100,000 people entering a segment each year, if a segment is of 1 million people, but you get another 100,000 leaving it. But if you could extend that segment by retaining them into later stages of their life journey, then you will not only increase the actual number of customers you have, but you have the potential of dramatically increasing their expenditure, because people who are fit and well spend very little on healthcare, but those who are increasingly dependent are prepared to spend tens of thousands of pounds to do things that will help them to retain their independence. Now, and it's not just them, it's their families too. Some of the greatest spenders on healthcare of those over the age of 75 are their younger sons or daughters. And so whether it's smart pills or sensor-enabled tablets to enable them to check that their parents have actually taken their medication, whatever it is. Home care alone, and I don't mean nursing care at home, I just mean people who need occasional visits right up to high dependency. Nursing care alone is worth, home support alone is worth 8 billion euros in the UK already, and it's increasing fast, and you can multiply that up massively in countries like the US and Japan and so on. So we can look at a whole range of different technologies and so on, but finally, just one provocation is this: can we even stop the ticking clock? Well, there's a lot of people that would like to do so, and if you could find a way, if you could actually find a nutraceutical that has real evidence that it slows down the aging process, if you can find a compound that it demonstrably improves the healing of wounds or something like that, that can be included in a diet, then you will find yourself on the edge of a multi-billion-dollar market, blockbusters. If you can find something which significantly slows down the deterioration of brain function, for example. It might be a technology, it might be a technique, it could be a substance, it could be a traditional pharma. Here is an interesting one. to get us thinking. Imagine a drug which you inject for 1 month, which lowers your blood pressure to what it was when you were only 15 years old. You then throw the medicine away. Imagine that the drug not only improves the stretchability of the arteries, but also the stretchability of your face. In fact, it gives you a total body lift. The drug exists. It's called Altion 711, but don't buy it because it only works in mice and rats. But I'm saying that we are on the edge of extraordinary science. We know that monkeys on diets, special diets, live significantly longer. Now, that research has been debated. Some studies show these effects, some not. But we are regularly keeping earthworms alive to a human age of 200. We're keeping mice and rats alive routinely to the age of 160 or 170 in human years. That's about 4 3/4 to 5 years old if you're a mouse. Some studies suggest that monkeys on certain diets are living much longer. In fact, the studies can't be concluded because the monkeys are still alive, but they're getting significantly less disease on low-calorie diets. And in some animals, we're seeing the same effect as a low-calorie diet by giving them metformin, which is a well-known drug that's been used for decades for diabetes, old-age diabetes, and so on. And we are beginning to see gene tricks which delay or stop the aging process. We have found them in whales, we are finding them in rockfish, and they probably are the same tricks that turtles and parrots have. That we are studying 2 kinds of whales. Some live to the age of 20, some to the age of 200. The ones that live to the age of 200, as with the rockfish who live to the age of 100 versus the ones that only live to the age of 20, they obviously have developed some kind of genetic trick which stops the normal physiological processes of getting old. And within the next 3 years, I think we will know what those are. And finally, rationing. Let's be clear. The biggest opportunity for Sanofi is perhaps, in terms of over-the-counter, is people who are no longer able to get the funding that they wish for their own treatment from government or from insurers, and they're having to now fund it out of their own pocket. And they are making their own rationing decisions. So we have rationing across every part of the community. We have rationing in government budgets in the age of austerity, so that health is in competition with defence and education and agriculture. We have rationing within health, so cancer is in competition with orthopedics, which is in competition with paediatrics, and so on. We have rationing between patient groups, rationing between different cancer groups, rationing for prostate cancer or breast cancer or brain tumours. We have rationing that's happening inside people's own personal budgets. Rationing of health versus food versus heat or holidays or clothes. And at the end of the day, just like we produce a business case inside a business, we need to produce a compelling health case for the consumer